Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha TV. You're watching Constitutionally Yours from this lovely campus of Karnataka High Court in Bangalore. Constitutionally Yours is a program where we attempt to demystify provisions of Constitution. And today we will take up the directive principles of state policy. Joining me in this endeavor are a distinguished panel of guests: Justice Raghvendra Chauhan, Judge of the Karnataka High Court. I have with me Mr. V.S. Ugrappa, who is a senior leader and MLC nominated by the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly Karnataka. And we also have with us Captain Ganesh Karnik, Member of Legislative Assembly nominated by the Leader of Opposition, Karnataka Legislative Assembly. Joining us in this audience are students from National Law School, and they would be participating and putting questions to our guests on the dais. Straight away getting into the issue and the subject. So the point that we will be taking up in this episode is Article 45, which wanted compulsory and free education for children. Now that has been achieved because an act, a national act, the state at the center has enacted a law which is right to education. But it's the implementation part where we have a problem. So what is it? So on the implementation part, I'll start with Mr. Ugrappa. On the implementation part, sir, right to education, a very important landmark, goal achieved by the state is giving that right to the people.
See, but ultimately, on this issue we have to see two articles. One, Article 45. So earlier it was in Directive Principles of State Policy. So in 2010, one more provision has been introduced, that is Article 21A, right to education. See, this after introduction of Article 21A, now right to education has become a fundamental right of a citizen. So whoever right has been infringed by not providing an education, they can invoke the provisions of Article 226 and seek a writ of mandamus directing the state government to.
So that's the benefit that they have been given. But
this is one thing.
Do the states have the will to actually implement it?
Ultimately, that is the duty of the state, to see that all the citizens of this state or country has to get the education. See, there are two issues. One, education in their mother tongue. Article 350A makes it very clear. So in the early stage, they have to have their education in their mother tongue. But unfortunately, even the Supreme Court of India held other way. So there are certain problems. Ultimately, state has to see that each and every citizen, every child has to get the free and fair education, good education, if at all, if they want to see that the entire society has to.
Does the state lack will to implement it?
I don't think any state for that matter, at the center or the state level, they don't lack will. Accessibility was a problem, affordability was a problem, and allotting required necessary funds was a problem. Any progressive society should think in terms of giving modern education to its citizens. Now, having brought it under the right to education from the directive principles, I think the will has been manifested, will has been expressed. But unfortunately, even after RTE, we have issues of implementation. There is no doubt about it. But I, for one, I strongly believe that in due course of time, the lifestyle is changing. People have realized that yes, education is a must for progress. Over a period of time, it's a huge country. In Karnataka, if I am not wrong, from KG to PG, we have not less than 1.40 crore children going to schools and colleges. It's a huge number. It is not the lack of will. I personally feel it is the logistics and the gigantic size in this country. Even though successive governments at the center and the state have endeavored to introduce our children to modern day education, unfortunately at the implementation level there have been lacunas.
So 4 years, it's been 4 years. Have you come across a real public interest litigation or a child who has come to the court saying that the state is depriving me of right to education?
Yes, there have been cases on that aspect, but to continue what Captain Karnik is saying, I think it's a misnomer that the moment you have a law, there should be an overnight change in the country. No law ever says that I come as a magic wand to change the condition of a country or a society. It takes time for a law to be implemented, and considering the fact that not only the vastness of this country, considering the large population we have, number one. Number two, considering the fact that part of this population is a migratory population. One of the issues that was brought before the Karnataka High Court that we are tackling with is the right of a child to an education from a migrant background. Now, so many Biharis and non-Kannadigas come into the state of Karnataka. What happens to that right of that child? Who is going to ensure that he will go to a school? What sort of a school will he go into? And I think due to the interpretation given by the Honorable Supreme Court, due to the will of the state, yes, we are trying to tackle that problem, but we have not reached a complete solution.
It's ongoing.
It's an ongoing process, and I think people will have to be patient a bit till we reach 100% literacy. Also remember that the compulsory education in United States was made compulsory as early as 1771.
We've just made it.
We have just made it.
Okay.
Therefore, we will be wrong in
We'll take
comparing
some questions.
ourselves to that country.
I will add one sentence. We have to see the situation in Kerala, where they have achieved
it.
they have achieved 100% literacy.
Literacy, correct.
See,
literacy
similarly,
is on the rise.
But sir, the definition of literacy is you can sign.
see, ultimately, one should be a perfect man with the education.
But literacy has a definition in the state.
It is a limited definition.
That's the problem,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah, it is a limited
So we are trying
definition.
to achieve the limited definition.
Yeah.
We are not targeting education, and that's why I say that is the will of the state there. Yeah, the question.
Thousands of private unaided schools are shutting down because they cannot bear the financial cost of supporting these children over and above the amount reimbursed by the state. Can we strike a balance between the rights of these schools and the children?
No, it is not correct.
Not correct, yes.
See, ultimately, it is the duty of the state government to see that each and every child has to get the education. See, now after amendment of Article 21A, state has been funding. State has been paying 5,000 to 11,000 for a child every year from the exchequer of the state.
Okay.
So, see, after 21A, 25% of the seats has been earmarked for the poorer class of that locality,
Economic weak section.
weaker sections. So, whoever gets a seat under that category, their fee will be paid by the government.
State.
So, thereby, even aided or unaided schools, they are running in a very good manner.
Yes, sir, you would like to add?
Actually, private schools are not being closed because government has not been funding. See, there are three categories. One is completely private. Government doesn't give a penny. Then there is a category called aided schools, where government pays the salaries of identified, recognized aided teachers in that school. Unaided schools are not closing because government is not funding. Unaided Kannada medium schools are closing because of children not coming to take up Kannada medium education. That is the problem.
No, even in unaided schools, those who gets the admission under this Article 21A, even for them government has been paying the fee.
That is 25% under RTE from the lower sections of society in that community are accepting admission or being given admission in the so-called unaided schools. Those students, government pays to an extent of maximum 11,800 rupees per month. That is being paid. It's huge amount of money.
Next question.
Sir, my question is, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child says that a child is a person who has not yet reached 18 years of age or has not attained majority subject to the laws of the country. In India, the age of majority being 18 years, the RTE stipulates that children will be provided with education only up to 14 years of age. So effectively, they lose out on 4 years of education. So shouldn't the state do something to resolve this anomaly?
See, ultimately we have to see the economic position of the state.
Ah.
See, state has got many issues to tackle. There is an unemployment problem, there is a poverty. See, we have to see that state has to develop for state has to provide infrastructure. State has to see that all these agriculture, irrigation projects has to come up. So by ultimately, state has to see the economic position of the state and to allocate the funds. Now states are, in fact, union government has taken a decision. Even the framers of the constitution, they contended that up to 6 years, state has to take care of the education of a child. Now it has become 6 to 14 years.
14.
Earlier it was not so.
Right.
So if state is going to be strengthened financially, I think state will.
We are moving towards that.
Yeah.
Yes, Captain.
I think she has a valid point. Now, it's state's responsibility to ensure that a child is given education till 14, and he continues to be a child till 18.
Yeah.
Now, if you employ him, there is some law which says child labor, anti-child labor law.
Yeah.
Now, what will the child do then? So, I think progressively affordability and accessibility is a major issue, but I think you have a valid point and we should make it till 18. We must make it compulsory education till 18.
Yeah, you would like to answer quickly?
Yes, I think you have a very valid point.
Yes.
But please remember that even the age of the majority is defined differently in different laws.
Yeah.
Now, considering the economic constraint, perhaps the state in its wisdom thought, let us have it from increase it from 6 to 14. Perhaps 5 years down the line, we would say, okay, why 14? Why not 18? And I think, yes, the law needs to be changed on that point.
It's time for us to head into a break. When we return, we will discuss the issue of promotion of cottage industry, which is Article 43. Welcome back. Article 43 of promotion of cottage industries. As it reads, the state shall endeavour to secure by suitable legislation or economic organization or in any other way to all workers, agricultural, industrial or otherwise, work, a living wage, conditions of work ensuring a decent standard of life and full enjoyment of leisure and social and cultural opportunities, and in particular the state shall endeavour to promote cottage industries on an individual or cooperative basis in rural areas. Now this is a very vast directive principle. It also goes to the extent, that's the place where the workers will connect to this directive principle, is a decent standard of life and full employment of leisure and social and cultural opportunities. So it's a very holistic provision and a very good goal for the state to achieve. So my question to you is the state paying lip service to this provision of directive principle?
I don't think so. Considering the fact that we have different schemes for encouraging cottage industries, the smaller scale industries, but I think again we will have to see it on a larger extent, canvas. When you talk about cottage industries, you also have to talk about globalization. It's the impact of globalization that is killing
The cottage industry.
I'll give you an example. We are all now used to wearing kurtas, which are produced by the power looms. How many of us wear kurtas which are actually the chicken work being done by women around Lucknow? We certainly don't. Therefore, that cottage industry is going out of the market.
It's also more expensive.
Sir, if you wish to have cottage industries, let's face it, manual labor one day will become very expensive as it has become in the West.
Yeah.
Therefore, the question is, how do you balance the conflicting interest? The interest of the consumer who might want a more inexpensive commodity to be made available, and yet the fact that so many lives depend on it. I think a balance needs to be struck, and I think the government is doing, trying its level best to strike a balance.
So what the state is doing, is it enough?
See, India is a vast country where we are having about 125 crore population. See, we can see two Bharats. One is rural India, another one is urban India. See, ultimately, majority of the people who are depending upon on agriculture. And other side, the literacy rate of the population is around 67%. See, ultimately, if at all, if state wants to see that each and every citizen has to progress or has to develop, ultimately they have to have a job. See, that is why ultimately, whether it is union government or a state government, they have to encourage cottage industries. The encouragement which has been given by the union government as well as state government, according to me, it is inadequate.
Sir?
There are two major issues. One is the livelihood issues in the villages. Number two is the quality of life in the villages. One estimate says, even though 58 to 60% live in the rural area today, in the next 25 years, 40% of the rural population will migrate to cities. Now just imagine what is going to happen to cities like Mumbai or Bangalore for that matter.
Yeah.
And number two, what is going to happen to the agriculture in the villages? After all, people who are going to migrate are from the younger generation. So it is very important for a balanced economy, what our Honorable former President Abdul Kalam introduced as a concept called Pura, providing urban amenities in rural area. Successive governments have been endeavoring their level best to promote cottage industry in the village. So to generate employment in the village area, to provide quality life in the villages, and to ensure that our tier 1 city, tier 2 city and tier 3 cities do not become concrete jungles and they do not provide any facility or make life very difficult in cities. We have to ensure that the provisions of the article for cottage and promoting cottage industry has to be very seriously taken into account. It does not mean that we are not doing anything. We are trying to do something, but I think we have to shift the focus and have
more needs to be done.
It has to be done.
Questions?
Ultimately, providing an infrastructure.
The difficulty with cotton industry is not the fact that it is not being produced. The difficulty is marketing.
Correct.
Lot of things are being produced. For example, take the brass articles which are produced in Bastar. But what do you do with the marketing? I think the marketing strategies need to be there. Number two, people have to take pride in buying their
own
thing.
products.
Yes.
That is lacking.
That is lacking.
Yeah, first we have to provide infrastructure. Infrastructure for processing and for marketing. See, now unfortunately, see the scenario of our state. There are only less than 1% of the government employees are there in our state. What is the amount which we are earmarking for their salaries and other things? Around 40,000 crores out of 1,50,000 crores.
My God.
So for less than 1% of the officials, so we are spending more than 40,000 crores
on the maintenance and upkeep.
See, this is one thing. Second thing, we have to see the per capita income of the common man. A common man's per capita income around 80,000 rupees per year, whereas a ITBT official's income, it is much
Higher.
than the common man's income. Ultimately, state and union government has to see that a common man's income has to be improved. So par with other sections.
In 1947, the population was around 35 crores. 80% of them lived in villages. That's about 24 crores. Today, 60%, 58% they stay in villages. Of 125 crores, it's about 72 crores. So there are various issues pertaining to their livelihood. So we need to strengthen, you call it cottage industry or by any name,
Rural
so
economy.
that you generate employment in the rural area.
Question.
Provide them urban amenities so that they don't migrate to cities.
Question.
The lack of bargaining power, how effective do you think the labor laws implementation is in the cottage industry?
Labor laws vis-a-vis cottage industry, because anyway it's an industry which is facing huge challenges.
Yeah.
Now the problem is ensuring labor laws in cottage industry becomes a even bigger challenge to implement. So how do we go about it?
In one word, the implementation of labor law vis-a-vis the cottage industry is dismal.
And what
And
are the possibilities of
Not only that, please also remember another aspect which needs our attention is the child labor in that cottage industry. For example, in Rajasthan we have two problems. The jewelry industry, because all these gems need to be polished, hire child labor. The carpenter industry hires child labor, and yet there is no protection to those children. So, and one thing that we noticed while we were trying to work with the child labor problem in Rajasthan is the nexus between the producers, the jewelers, the persons who are producing the carpet, and the bureaucracy and especially the police. The moment we would ask the police to go and raid a place to recover these children who are almost treated as bonded laborers at times, it is the police that used to tip off that we are coming, make sure
in
the children
fact,
disappear. So that's a real issue that we need to tackle, is the implementation of labor law and to make the condition of the laborers in cottage industry much better. But unfortunately there seems
not
to be a
happening.
lack of will.
Sir,
See, ultimately, state has to protect the rights of
Everyone.
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 Whether they are the laborers of cottage industry or some other industry. See, everybody talks only on rights, not on responsibilities.
yeah,
That is the irony.
duties of the citizen.
Even in the constitution, there are fundamental rights as well as fundamental duties. Nobody talks on fundamental duties. Everybody talks on only rights. See, ultimately, we have to see that country has to progress with the contribution of each and every citizen. See, then only we can see the strong India, developed India.
So you are saying the citizen needs to be more dutiful.
Responsible.
Yeah,
and
responsible and
dutiful.
Duty conscious.
Dutiful. Yeah.
Thanks for raising that issue of laws with regard to cottage industry. From the panel, I should not ask you a question. But what about the labor laws as far as the agricultural labor is concerned? We don't have anything except Minimum Wages Act. He doesn't get pension, he doesn't get gratuity, he doesn't
Nothing.
get holidays. Have you been talking about it? At the age of 70, 75, people go and work. He will stop working only when he falls sick, otherwise when he can't do that. So cottage industry comes next. 60%, that is 70 crore plus people are either directly or indirectly employed in the villages. Now who is talking about their rights as far as labor laws are concerned? We're not been talking about
in
it.
fact, in the last 70 years, we have ignored the rights of a majority section of the society. We are only concentrating on the rights of less than 1%
Organized labor.
Organized
labor
labor.
as
Correct,
well as
correct.
Sir, what do you think these labor laws are sufficient for in such an unorganized sector, or do you think that a new form of labor law should be implemented?
Labor laws in India are becoming a hindrance, so we are being told that they are becoming a hindrance to industrialization of India, to the foreign investment in India. Then the question is, how much labor laws do you need for the unorganized sector? To answer your question, yes, we need labor laws for the organized sector because it's a human rights problem. We can't ignore their constitutional rights or their human rights. Therefore, they need the protection of the law. The question is, to what extent will you give it? For example, suppose if I were to now impose the minimum wages on the cottage industry, the question would be, is
They do
that
not survive.
activity now economically feasible for him to carry out? Then what do you do? These are the things that need to be debated both by the state with the help of the best of the economists or those persons who are best experts in that area as to how do you come up with a middle path.
Yeah,
But it
Mr.
can't be
Ugrappa.
denied
for
that that needs
organized
labour.
laborers, there are sufficient
Laws.
enactments.
Yeah.
Yes.
For unorganized laborers, of course, the union government as well as other state governments, so they have started giving certain rights to them. Take for example, Swastha Bima Yojana. Swastha Bima Yojana has been implemented by the union government since 2009 and 10. Thereby they are providing medical facilities and other facilities also. Similarly, by introducing this minimum wages act and also introducing this rural employment guarantee scheme, even for unorganized section, unorganized laborers, yes, governments have given certain programs, but which are not adequate. Ultimately, you know, by seeing their economic position, ultimately union and state government has to see that they have to extend little more programs to them.
Yes, sir. Captain
This is
Karnik.
a very delicate issue. There are human rights issues, there is economics, and there are issues concerning exploitation. Now, when you legislate to ensure that a labor, whether it is a farm labor, organized sector, ill-organized sector, whatever it is, you must address all these issues. You must link enactment with the productivity and ensure that there is no exploitation. It's a very, very difficult issue, but we have to come at a balance. I think it is time we look into this labor law issue from a different perspective altogether. It can be to address the globalization and the competitiveness of Indian industry. It should also cover the areas of villages where people are exploited, even children being exploited. So what you raised is very right, I personally feel.
But it is not to say that they're being ignored. Yes, there are policies, there are projects which are being implemented. The only thing is perhaps the pace needs to pick up more. Perhaps we need more laws, and not only laws, the implementation of those laws. That is where the machinery has to.
Ultimately, you know, laborers has to have a right in the production, in the economy of that section.
Industry.
That's all we have time for in this episode. We'll be back with a new issue and a new subject. Keep watching Raj Sabha TV.